Who gets to decide whether the United States is at war
the
or
president,
not?
in my opinion.
No.
If we're being invaded,
Actually,
I want the commander-in-chief to know.
Scott, no. It's actually the Congress.
When you're asking if we're being invaded.
I'm asking.
You want to call Congress and see if we're being invaded?
I'm asking a basic constitutional
We'll be taken over
question.
before they ever get to the committee.
Who gets to decide whether the United States is at war? The answer is Congress.
I'm talking about if we're being invaded.
When the president says we're at war, he has to
show we're actively
prove,
at war,
and
not
really
a
what he needs to do is go to Congress.
Well, you guys discuss it in committee.
In today's video, Abby Phillip absolutely humiliates Scott Jennings with one simple question on Newsnight with Abby Phillip. What makes this conversation so wild is that it's not even just a policy argument. It's a clash over the Constitution itself. One side is pushing the idea that the president can decide we're being invaded and then use old wartime-style laws to remove people without the normal legal process. The other side is saying, hold on, that's not how this country works. And if due process disappears, then nobody's rights are safe. So let's dive in and watch how Abby Phillip shuts down Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
These individual judges are overstepping. If what you're essentially saying is that the president, who is the commander-in-chief, cannot determine when we are being invaded. An individual district court judge is going to decide that? No, thank you.
Can I just ask a simple question? Who gets to decide whether the United States is at war or not?
The president, in my opinion. No. If we're being invaded, I want the commander-in-chief to know.
Scott, no. It's actually the Congress.
When you're asking if we're being invaded.
I'm asking.
You want to call Congress and see if we're being invaded?
I'm asking a basic constitutional
We'll be taken over before they ever get to the committee.
Who gets to decide whether the United States is at war? The answer is Congress.
I'm talking about if we're being invaded.
When the president says we're at war, he has to
show we're actively at war,
and
not
really
a
what he needs to do is go to Congress.
Well, you guys discuss it in committee. We'll let in another 20 minutes.
Wait a second, though. I thought the genius of our system was that we weren't beholden to one guy's opinion. That the genius of the American system of government was that we had 3 co-equal branches, and in those co-equal branches, decisions were made about how we go about doing things. Now, we want to tear that to shreds so that we can kowtow to one guy's opinion, then we are in a monarchy. We're being ruled.
What's the distinction between strikes and whether the United States is actually at war with an entity or a nation? And there is a distinction. Now, nobody is saying here Trump can't deport people because, Barack Obama deported a lot of people.
And that's
Sochi. Absolutely. He deported a lot of people, and he did so based on the existing law. It is possible to do.
It's not an applicable law.
That's right. Go ahead.
Because
as a lawyer,
because there's
that law has to be used at wartime when there's an invasion.
But war is different than it was in 1812.
No, we cannot use colloquialisms to say, "Oh, we're generally at war."
The Houthis are not a country, and yet we're bombing them.
But let's be clear about this. Nobody is saying that Trump doesn't have the ability to deport people. He has the ability to deport people, and he should. Right? There was a lot of people coming in that should not be here. He has the right to do that. But he's trying to use this act to get around due process. And the court is saying this act does not apply. They're not telling him not to deport. They're saying use the process that's in place because this act does not apply.
As much bureaucracy and red tape as possible.
No, it's not bureaucracy.
It's the law. What we're trying to do is use the law. The law. I mean, look, is it such a big problem to say you can do things, but you have to do them lawfully?
Scott's whole vibe here is basically, if the president says we're being invaded, that's it. End of conversation. And that sounds tough and decisive until you realize what he's actually arguing for. One person gets to flip the country into a wartime posture whenever it's politically convenient, and then use that as a shortcut around courts, Congress, and basic rights. That's not strong leadership. That's a cheat code, and Dante and Van are right to push back without even needing to get dramatic about it, because the founders literally designed the system to prevent exactly what Scott is describing. Congress has the power to declare war for a reason, because war powers are the most dangerous powers a government can have. Once you let a president decide we're at war based on vibes, suddenly every problem becomes a battlefield and every person becomes a potential enemy. That's why the courts matter here. Not because judges are trying to block deportations, but because they're doing what courts are supposed to do. Check whether the government is using the right law in the right way. And the Enemies Act, that's not just some casual immigration tool. That's a wartime authority meant for actual declared conflicts, like when the US is fighting a state actor. It's historically been used during major wars, and it has a pretty dark track record when it gets stretched, because it can turn into guilt by association real fast. And the part that always gets ignored is this: due process isn't a bonus feature for people you like. It's the firewall that protects everyone from the government getting sloppy, vengeful, or lazy. Because once you normalize, we don't need hearings, just trust the president, you're not talking about law and order anymore. You're talking about power and obedience. If Trump wants to deport people legally, he already has plenty of tools to do it. The fact that he's reaching for the most extreme one tells you the point isn't efficiency, it's avoiding accountability.
There's a process.
We think this is lawful.
But it's not.
No, but the court just said it's
One
not.
The court just said that
judge,
it's
one
not.
stupid judge, and I want to see what the rest of them
You
say.
know it's
Yes,
stupid.
why
You
is
know
that
it's not
stupid?
I
Because he
guess we have to
disagrees
remind
with the
everybody
assessment
here
of
that
Donald
Trump
Trump.
appointed this judge.
I don't care.
Okay?
Again, it
So this
doesn't
is a
matter.
Trump-appointed judge.
But also
He's
his
not
ruling
infallible.
only extends
Judges
to
make
his
stupid
district,
decisions
right?
all the time.
Well, okay.
So the ruling
How about
is
this?
not actually that
So
big of
you
a
say the
deal.
judge
They
is
tend to go
stupid.
by
How do we
the
know
second,
that?
guys.
How do we know that the president is stupid?
I'm sure that's your opinion.
Well, it certainly is.
But
And
he won the election. And
So
you
what
don't-
does
I
that
don't
mean?
think anybody, listen, I don't think anybody is stupid. I think all three branches have
definitely
the
some
right
people
to
that are stupid.
operate the way they want. I think the President of the United States
Introduce you to
has
the
the
brother.
right to operate based on his opinion because he's voted in. But the judicial branch has the right to interpret the meaning of the law the way they see it.
Can I
That's
ask
their
you a
right.
question? Let me
And
ask you a question.
To make proof of requirement.
This
Due process
is a
of
key question.
requirement.
What if another group of people, say not illegal aliens, but just some other group from somewhere else, actually came to the shores of the United States, not a nation, but say a group, any kind of group, and actually did come ashore and try to invade, I don't know what else you would call it, the United States? Would you run to court and ask a federal judge if the president of the United States can we defend the nation now?
But that's
can
not
we
what's
stop
that's
the?
not what we're talking
It
about.
is.
You're
They're
comparing
coming
two different
across.
issues.
They're
You were
coming
also,
across the
you were
border.
also
doing that.
generalizing here. You were
Yes.
talking about, yes, I agree with you. I agree with you, Scott.
But what's the
that
difference?
Hold on, listen
What's
to
the
me.
difference?
Because there would be a
If they're-
declaration of war
if
and then the
they're-
act would
if
how
they're-
quickly.
If there
Hold
are
on,
gang
Scott and
members
Dante, let
and
me
if
let you
they're
out.
killing or raping women in this country, they should absolutely be deported, and there should be deportation orders, and there should be a process, and there is a process to deport them. You are saying that every person that is here illegally
Yes.
is raping people, and
No,
that
I
is
did
not
not say that.
true.
You lied.
Yes,
You're
you're
lying.
saying they're
You're
all
lying.
part of these gangs.
lying.
They
Well,
all
you're-
that-
you're-
this is
you're-
they're
you're-
invading
you're-
our
you're-
country. They're doing all these things.
You're certainly
They are
associating
not.
them.
They're not all violent, but they are all
not all
criminal.
violent.
But
They are
they
not
are
all
all- but
violent.
they are all
And
criminal.
everybody, whether they are 2 years old or whether they are 90 years old and have been in our country the entire time, they deserve a process. The criminals.
I'm sorry,
the
what
criminals
process did they follow
should
to get
leave.
here? The process of breaking our laws?
Well, because there is a law, there are laws in order, and there are deportation proceedings to get these people out of our country.
Listen how long you want this to last.
The 99-year-old who is here
It'll
did
last
not
forever.
invade our
All
country.
It'll last
But
forever.
First off, calling a judge stupid because you don't like the ruling is basically admitting you don't actually want the law. You want a referee who only makes calls for your team. And the whole point of lifetime federal judges is that they're not supposed to be swayed by polls Fox segments or who won the last election. Their job is to look at the statute and the Constitution and say, does this action fit the law? That's not activism, that's literally the design. And here's the bigger thing. Scott keeps framing immigration like it's a battlefield invasion. But legally, an invasion is not just a lot of people crossing the border. In US constitutional history, invasion means an armed hostile force, like a foreign military or organized armed attack. If you let presidents redefine that word whenever it's politically useful, you basically hand them emergency powers on demand. Today, it's migrants. Tomorrow, it's protesters. Next week, it's suspected extremists. Once the definition becomes vibes, the rights become optional. Also, the "they're all criminals" line is a rhetorical trick that confuses civil violations with violent crime. Most immigration violations are civil matters, like overstaying a visa, not felony convictions. And even if you want to treat unlawful entry more harshly, we already have deportation laws on the books that work. ICE deported people under every president using existing processes. So the real question becomes, why reach for the most extreme wartime-style law if normal enforcement tools already exist? That's why Xochitl's point lands. You can absolutely remove dangerous people, but you can't do it by turning millions of human beings into one faceless category and skipping the basic step of proving who actually did what. Because without that process, you don't get law and order. You get errors, abuse, and the government sweeping up the wrong people, including legal residents and even citizens, which has happened before in US history more times than people like to admit. And the 99-year-old example matters because it exposes the absurdity of this invasion framing. Someone who's been here for decades didn't invade anything. They built a life here.
Let me let you get a word in.
Well, to me, like the energy in defense of these gangbangers.
I'm not defending them. I just said gang should leave.
I feel like that whole where it's like, you know, first they came for the guy who beats his wife, and I said nothing because I don't beat my wife. And then they came for the guy who said I love killing Jews, and I said nothing because I don't love killing Jews. And now they came for the gangbangers, and I said nothing.
Can I say something real quick? Do you know why that triggers me? That triggers me because I come from a place where a whole bunch of people, they're American citizens, but they're thrown away. They're thrown away because they might have committed crimes, because they got in trouble when they were young.
You should be the angriest that they care about the gangbangers and not those people.
No, what I care about is that there is a system of laws that is supposed to protect the due process of those people.
Yeah.
And that has to matter more than what society thinks about whatever they have
didn't
done.
get due process.
Hold on.
I don't know why the Democrats are not angry about that. Because they're not citizens. We do not owe them the same thing. It has to mean something to be an American.
Bachi, you are saying essentially that you don't like the way that the law is applied in this instance, and you would like to change it, which is fine.
I'm not saying that, Abby. I'm saying every other district judge has ruled in Trump's favor on it.
That is absolutely not true. That is not true. Nobody, no other judge, and let me clarify this. This is important. No other judge.
Let me let Dante
No
finish,
other
and then we
judge
gotta go.
has issued an opinion on this specific issue.
Yes, they've not ruled against it.
No. What the Supreme Court said was the judge that it was in front of did not have the authority to make this decision. It wasn't in the right district, so he sent it to Texas. This is the first judge that's ruled on this actual case of whether or not this rule or this law applies, the Enemies Aliens Act. And they said it does not apply. This is the first time it was ruled on that.
6 other federal judges have issued provisional orders on this issue of whether and how, but really specifically how.
But it's
the
a
Trump
constitutional question, though,
administration
because they
can
think
deport these people.
Because you all are debating the statutes and the judge's right to oversee a statute. What the Trump administration is arguing is that this is a foreign policy issue, and we have sole right under the Constitution to execute American foreign policy. So they actually see themselves as above this conversation about individual judges micromanaging.
And I think that's a novel
act
interpretation. We got to go, but that's, I mean, Scott,
you've heard multiple officials
Scott,
say that.
I think you would acknowledge this is a novel interpretation of
I would add proper as well.
Okay, novel interpretation of the use of this particular statute for
and
immigration.
The only purpose of this use of this statute is to get around due process. Everything else is the same, except for this statute, you don't need due process. And why do we want to get around that?
Now here's the uncomfortable truth. The US government has a long history of expanding emergency powers in moments of fear, and once those powers exist, they never stay neatly contained. The Patriot Act was sold as a terrorism tool, and it quickly bled into domestic surveillance. Civil asset forfeiture was sold as a way to stop drug kingpins, and it turned into cops seizing money from regular people without ever charging them. That's the pattern Van is warning about, not protecting criminals, but protecting the guardrails that keep the state from becoming judge, jury, and executioner. And when Scott says they're not citizens, so they don't deserve the same protections, that's a huge misconception. Due process isn't some VIP perk reserved only for citizens. The Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed that persons in the US have constitutional protections in legal proceedings, not full political rights like voting obviously, but basic legal rights like being heard, having a neutral judge, and not being punished based on a government allegation alone. Also, the way they talk about invasion is doing a lot of work here. Under US law and historical interpretation, invasion doesn't mean a lot of migrants cross the border. It means a hostile armed force. If presidents can redefine invasion whenever it's convenient, then any future administration can use the same logic to declare a foreign threat and sidestep courts. And once you normalize skipping courts for the people society hates most, it becomes way easier to skip courts for people society is merely annoyed by. That's why Abby's point about the statute matters so much. The whole reason they want that specific law isn't because deportation can't happen without it. Deportation already happens every day under existing immigration law. The only new benefit is speed and fewer legal hurdles. And when a government's biggest selling point is we can do this without due process, that's exactly when you should get suspicious. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.